the hyperspace. Podcasting in the 25th century presents Cloning It In. Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to Cloning It In, our discussion and review of Star Wars, The Bad Batch. My name is Jared.
Hey, my name's Matt.
I'm Brian.
The gang's
And
here. The gang is here.
Gang's here. Well, there's a few people who aren't here. On our Star Wars shows, Lindsay is usually a co-host. However, she has no frame of reference for this show because she doesn't watch The Bad Batch yet. And of course, Mike's strike continues on Star Wars. So we'll see someday. Maybe he'll come back to us. But, guys, I was, in preparation for this show, listening to our last Bad Batch podcast that we did, Cloning It In.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to take a guess on when that was?
Ooh, 2 years ago?
Very close. It was August of 2021.
Wow.
That's when we did the season 1 wrap-up show for The Bad Batch. And it was kind of interesting listening to that episode because as we recorded it, all that time ago, we were hitting on things, I think, in our predictions that we may have seen come to pass. So in that way, we were prophets in some ways. But I am going to start out by saying that if you haven't watched The Bad Batch thus far, and you don't want to be spoiled, the spoiler Walkman is in hand. And
it's in hand, but is it going to work?
It always works, Matt.
It doesn't always work.
It always works.
In fact, it never has worked. To be fair, on the first try.
Well, we'll see about that. I think I have it queued up to the proper song, and here we go. And now.
Oh, yes. I can feel my creation. I'm getting your message.
Ah, crap.
It sounds like Wookiees humping.
That could be very... Oh, you know what this is? It's when Chewbacca's dad is watching that VR, Wookiee porno.
That was so weird.
Off.
What is going on there?
I'll turn this off. Okay, let me... And... Spoiler alert, red alert. There it is. Okay. Whoops, crap. That's prop comedy right there.
We're spoiling everything, guys. Come on.
Everything.
And listen, to be fair, if you're not watching The Bad Batch, you should be. Because this show is fantastic.
It is.
And you can't be left behind. If you're a Star Wars fan, there are certain things at this point that you should be clued in on. You should watch the Clone Wars, you should watch Rebels, and you should be up on The Bad Batch because this is good Star Wars, guys.
I would agree with that. I am going to also say something else here right at the beginning. It is possibly nice mug, Matt.
Thank you very much.
I have my Darth Y'all. That was a Christmas present from my good buddy Matt. We are, I think, and
you're straight from the Falcon on that one.
And look, that looks a little.
That was like a nice crystal clean cup until like Wookiee and Han got it, and then it just turned into a soiled mess.
Oh, it's a little Camtano, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's the ice cream machine.
Yeah,
look at that.
Pencil holder.
I think The Bad Batch is possibly the most schizophrenic show I've ever watched.
Well, no, I'd say this season has been.
Yes. Yeah. But that having been said, if we do think back to the days of the Clone Wars, we went weeks where we were in the midst of these adventures where we were like, what the heck am I watching?
Oh, some of those were just, please stop.
I mean, R2 and 3PO looking for a cake for Padme's party. Let's not even forget the infamous frog general, Maber Gascom, which his adventures went on for like what seemed like 6 months, which it was terrible. Now, I will say at the front, the Bad Batch is not that inconsistent. Even the filler episodes are enjoyable to me somewhat.
Well, I mean, I think you could call season 2 the side quest, because that's what this whole season seems to be for the most part, is you kind of want them to go in a direction where it's taking Star Wars, much like how Andor set a weird bar in recent Star Wars, because it really kind of pushed that white space envelope really hard, and it really gave a Star Wars fan a lot of like meat, to chew on. And the Bad Batch teases you with these kinds of things, and you want it to like really sink its claws in and really pull forward in that narrative. But then it goes on all these side quests, and
yes,
you're just kind of like, well, okay, I'll go with you.
But I will say that when they have sunk their teeth into the meat, it's been quite good.
We'll get to that.
Yeah,
very tasty.
Yeah. So, the season kicked off with what I thought was an interesting adventure where they were trying to seize Count Dooku's assets from, because obviously in the timeline we are probably less than a year or maybe a year after Revenge of the Sith. And of course, the Clone Wars cleanup would continue for some time. And so they go to Sereno, to Count Dooku's palace, which we did see in the Clone Wars, and to start seizing his assets. And the Bad Batch were sent to kind of skim off the top of that, to bring back to their underworld master, Sid, whatever wasn't tied down and whatever was worth some money. And I thought those adventures were kind of interesting. A good start to the season.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty exciting. It was a pretty good episode. My only honest complaint, and it's really kind of minor, is that I didn't really get to see any of the inside of Dooku's palace, which I really kind of wanted to see a little bit of. And but beyond that, it was a good start to the show. I thought it was pretty good. Guys, before I forget, I'm sorry, because I just watched the newest episode just maybe an hour ago to be current with this. And I have to get it off my chest before we go any further, is that Omega's voice, or accent, I should say, weirds me out to no end. I cannot get a grasp on her accent. And every time her character speaks, I'm trying to put it together. Like, how is she saying this? What is this accent? It's weirding me out, guys. I'm sorry.
It's New Zealand.
Yeah,
she has a New Zealand accent.
But it's really not. It's really kind of something even more like unique to the show, I think. But
well, obviously she, being a clone of Django's, has picked up his affectation, but it's very pronounced. Like, so for example, if you had Tamora Morrison saying Hunter, Ricka, I don't think it would sound quite like it does when Omega says it, which is Ricka, Hunter,
Ricka,
Tick, Echo.
It just takes me out of it every now and then.
Yeah, well, I mean,
but I've moved on now. I feel it's off my chest. I feel better. The sharing has been cathartic.
So, Matt.
But back to your point. Spoils of War was a good kickoff to the season. It was kind of clever. I liked, they're showing you interesting aspects to the early Empire here, and how they're operating, and how they're kind of like slowly but surely just stripping resources away and getting their foothold on different places and the way they're doing it. So it's kind of cool to see. And I really liked. I mean, it's kind of a basic concept that they're looting, in a sense, but it was kind of cool to see that they're looting. The Empire's looting all this stuff with these giant cargo containers going up, and it was just kind of like, that makes sense. I mean,
they got to fund this big operation they have.
Yeah, exactly.
Now. And of course, there's almost precedent for this, that in the wake of like World War I, the Allies basically stripped Germany of everything that wasn't tied down and said, okay, you got to give us all this stuff.
And well, I mean, Germany too. Germany was taking paintings and anything.
After
art. So
exactly. So I think that the Empire is probably punishing these separatist worlds formerly separatist worlds by doing this. And of course, in the public's eye, Count Dooku was the leader of the separatists, so of course they're going to go and start ransacking his crap because hey, he's the guy. To them, to us would be like going after hey, Hitler's eagle's nest. Yeah, let's go see what's in there. But yeah, the animation on this show is beyond reproach. Even the less um even the filler episodes look fantastic. And I was noticing today as I was watching the newest episode, which I thought was actually pretty good, even though it didn't really progress the story that we were introduced to last week. Some of that animation was just really, I mean, obviously, you had the Lion King scene when all the antelope come through the valley, but I mean, that stuff, and it sounded great on a surround sound system, and I thought it looked fantastic. As Wrecker is like trying to cover, the element that they're after, and they're all just running over him, and even just the way the dust moves in those dust clouds. It's stuff that, usually would only see in a feature film.
Yeah.
And it's really awesome that Lucasfilm Animation is continuing to evolve this style that they did with the Clone Wars.
Yeah, you think where the Clone Wars started with that, feature film, the animation in that, to where Bad Batch is now.
Mhm.
And it is just miles and miles different and is leaps and
It's
bounds.
it looks like a different. I mean, even though the character models look similar, it's almost like it's just night and day.
When they approach Coruscant in, I guess it's the 8th episode, it looks like Revenge of the
So
Sith.
amazing.
It's absolutely incredible.
And if they weren't holding to your point, Jared, with their the face models and character models, if they weren't sticking to that look just as, just because that's the look that the Clone Wars started with.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what this show would look like if they tried just themselves just to remodel these things to be as normal as possible, because the background, the starships, to your point, the Coruscant, the planets, the small animations like the dust, the water, everything looks so amazing in the show.
Yeah. And
I mean, really
like
impressive.
The newest episode, as we record this, just aired today, when they're approaching the ship in the planet in the Marauder. It looks like a scene from one of the movies, the live action films. There's really no difference between the landscape and this ship. If that ship had landed and Diego Luna had stepped out of it as Cassian Andor, it would have looked like it belonged there.
Yeah.
It was but I'd like to also, while we're here on the Marauder, today I was kind of appreciating the Marauder. I mean, now that it's been stolen from them, I think the Marauder is a great looking ship. I think it's just really cool. It's we've got it's sort of the proto Imperial shuttle with the trifold, but it kind of looks it looks dangerous.
A little tougher than the Lambda shuttle. Yeah.
Yes.
A little more dangerous.
I noticed something in that episode. Well, I need to go back and verify, but it looks like they actually closed the landing platform on the shuttle.
Yes.
When they left, and they like never do that, and then it gets stolen. The one time they closed the door,
man, hey, that's a good point. And Brian, you're the resident collector here. There has been no toy of the Marauder released, has there?
No, not yet. It would be nice to see it. I know there's a movement out there among collectors, that wants more vintage collection ships and things, but they want to do either the HasLab deal, or they want Hasbro to do something.
Well, it's a no-brainer. I mean, for this, I mean, so anyway, I think was the second episode the pod racing episode?
No, that was the 4th episode, I think. Wasn't it?
They have
Yeah, because the third one wasn't that the solitary clone?
Solitary Clone was third.
You
Yeah.
know, that was I picked up on something interesting when I was watching that today. I went back through and watched them all in a row,
Oh wow.
and there is mention of the Defense Recruiting Act in that episode.
hmm
There's some guys sitting at the table eating lunch or breakfast or something, talking about it, and then it
hmm
comes up in episode 7,
Yes. Yeah,
and
they
that's the
definitely are
major plot point there.
sprinkling the breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
And I think that's certainly one of the biggest things that this season has brought us is the whole Defense Recruitment Act and the phasing out of the clones
Mm-hmm.
and the to bring and the age of wisdom.
Well, I mean, I tell you, masterfully played. Even like at the end of last season with the clone cities being destroyed, and
Yeah.
you think that you don't really think. I mean, it's pretty impressive when it happened, but I wasn't putting any of it together. But now you start to see all these little puzzle pieces and all these little chess pieces being played, to do just that, to get the clones out and to do a conscription, forced army in of the Empire, and how they managed to pull this off is pretty cool. How they explain this in the show.
Oh yeah. I
yeah,
mean, step one obviously was getting rid of the cloning facilities on Camino because they don't want them cranking out any more clones. Um, and the thing that that impressed me about the whole thing, of course, Palpatine is playing chess like 9 steps ahead of everybody else.
oh yeah, he's the
And
supercomputer.
but I have to admit when I was watching the episode where he appears and I thought, well, you know, as the Bad Batch go, and the whole sequence of them getting on that Venator Star Destroyer and then like crashing it into the dry docks. I thought all that was just awesome. Like they just
Yeah,
move it off its moorings and smash it into the ground. And I was like, and then to get in the escape pods and just
yeah,
eject themselves. That all was fantastic. And but then I thought, as this evidence is presented to the Senate, I was like, well, there's a catch. There's something here that's not going to be right. But then they play it, and it is what it is. It's Star Destroyers destroying Camino, and I was like, well, holy crap!
oh, there
What is
was a
this about?
catch.
This has been a horrible event.
Yeah, and then of
His
course,
fault.
yeah, Palpatine comes, and everybody is like in the Senate is like outraged and shocked, and then old Palpatine pops up, and he's like, "Admiral Rampart, you are a criminal," or whatever. He goes, "Arrest him," and and so,
I was just following orders.
dude,
Oh,
so Rampart, I mean, so do we think Rampart is he going to be is he dead, or is he going to become an ally to the fledgling rebellion?
I kind of get the impression that we're not done seeing him yet.
Yeah, we're not done with him. I think that the Emperor, is kind of like, you've played your part now. Now go away.
Yeah, and
I'm gonna
obviously,
let you go. You just go away. I think that's how that's gonna play out. But
well,
or he'll
it's
get out of
funny.
there.
Like every time Palpatine does this, we think back to, remember when he's done with Dooku? He's
Yeah.
like, kill him
Get
now.
him.
It's just like, okay, and Dooku's like, what? Rampart was the same way. He's like, wait, what? No. And so I just have to, and then Palpatine, of course, turning this to his advantage, the clones did not act alone, or the Rampart did not act alone, and starts and gets what he wants anyway, despite all this crap happening.
But in the build up to all this, though, they're doing a good job showing you the new kind of apathy of the Senate. How you have the select senators now being like little sycophantic to the empire and to the emperor, and they're just kind of like the yes men are in place already, and the Senate is kind of a quiet place now. Take it to like when Palpatine first announced the empire, how
Yeah.
how much energy was still in the Senate. Now when you're seeing it, it's just like it's becoming a ghost town. It's already, after just about a year into this, it's already quieting down,
Yeah.
and factions aren't speaking up, and they're just kind of staying back.
And,
So
and that carries all the way into Andor.
Where
exactly,
there's like 12 people in the whole
Right.
building.
it's like abandoned. Exactly. You're just preaching to empty seats.
Well, it's now I have to wonder this because I mean, and this is speculation. I'm asking you to speculate. Now, who so for the most part, people believe Palpatine to be the 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 chancellor who was almost murdered by the Jedi, who is left scarred and deformed. So with I think the only person who knows what is going on with him uh in his inner circle is probably his blue-skinned friend Mas Amedda.
I'd say that's
Like
true.
because I'm sure that Palpatine wanted this to happen. I mean, he wanted to move through this particular act. But do you think that the evidence of the Star Destroyers destroying Camino was that a monkey wrench that he just used to his advantage? Because I think he probably would have gotten what he wanted if that had not happened, if they had not presented that evidence to the Senate. Do you see what I'm saying?
I think
Like,
it was going to work out either way for him.
oh, well, of course.
That's just kind of the way it goes for Palpatine. It seems like he just knows how to manipulate every situation perfectly to whatever means he wants to accomplish.
And I mean, we could go down all kinds of rabbit holes on this, but like, we don't know what we don't know. For example, in the beginning of was it episode 7 or 8, where the clones are in the clone bar, which, by the way, it's pretty cool that in Coruscant there's like clone hangouts and all that stuff and clone bars.
Which I did some research.
Yeah.
That clone bar shows up in season 6 of the Clone Wars.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same place from earlier. But
it reminds me of the one in like a lighter version of the one in episode 2.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But like the clone that is the two guys are talking and one's on the conspiracy train. And he might have been a plant himself just to get things, talking and moving, just to draw out senators or people who are, trying to, navigate, against the current on this one. So it's like there's so many different tentacles that Palpatine, I'm sure, extended out to make this happen. So he was going to get it no matter what. And I think the minute Camino was wrecked, it was a lock. So
yes.
What about that assassin?
Okay, I thought that was Crosshair.
I did too. At first.
I was like,
I did too.
It's not even. I was like, oh, this weirdo in a mask. It's Crosshair. But then it turned out to be like just a clone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Crosshair is kind of dipped out of this show for a bit. I'm sure we're going to see him on the back end, but
yeah,
it's kind of been there was such a tension there in season 1, and it just kind of like evaporated. So I'm kind of looking forward to him somehow getting back in the show, because I think that at this point we need a little injection of that kind of tension in the show.
Something that happened in that I guess it was episode 8, or maybe it was at the end of 7, when the assassin kills himself with the big electric charge tooth or something in his mouth.
Do you remember where we'd seen that before?
Where had we seen that before?
In The Mandalorian.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He was the captain of that Star Destroyer that
that's right.
Bo-Katan and the Mando commandeered, and he did the same
that's
thing.
Right. Yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
Fried his brain.
But seeing that in an animated series that would purportedly be for kids, that was pretty hardcore shot to throw in there.
It's true.
It is, and it's another aspect of the, like, what I call the schizophrenic nature of this show, where we're having Tomb Raider with Wanda Sykes one week, and the next week we're getting, like, deep, super deep lore cuts, and people committing suicide on screen. So
we got to go back to that Wanda Sykes episode real quick.
Okay.
Kind of, interesting in the sense that you got to see more places of the galaxy, which is always fun to do. But I could not stand her character in this. Wanda Sykes is funny. I think she's actually pretty funny, but her character in this, she annoyed me so much. She's supposed to be like this hardened space pirate that can walk into any bar and be respected. And all I'm thinking, she's just a joke, and it's like, there's nothing tough about her. There's nothing, respectable about her, but she's like, we're going to go liberate some treasure. I'm like, oh, every time she spoke in that show, I'm like, this is terrible.
To me, it sounds like Wanda Sykes standing in a room reading lines.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's what it sounds like. And it doesn't help that the character they've animated looks like Wanda Sykes.
Yeah.
And, at least with Rhea Perlman of Cheers fame, at least she's a fat Trandoshan. So,
and like Hector Elizondo is that farmer guy or whatever in one of those in that second episode or something, or first episode.
Hector Elizondo? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
he was the guy that took him in. There was question, y'all Imperial? And they're like, are you Imperial? And
okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
So he took him in and kind of patched up Tech, I think.
Okay. Well, another thing that happened recently is that Echo went off with Rex, which I think was good because it's something that we actually talk about in our last Cloning It In podcast, in that Tech and Echo were almost interchangeable in their purpose. They were both always working on some technical problem, working on a computer, working on the ship. And neither one of them seemed to have any real personality because they were both always just doing the same thing together. And, I think Echo actually, he stood out because he's not a genetically altered clone. He's been obviously altered.
He's not a mutation. He's
not a mutation.
He's an augmentation.
Yeah.
But he's still of the same, I guess, genetic imprint as like Rex is. And, he's known Rex for a long time. And I thought it was an interesting choice that they chose to have Echo go off with Rex at the end of episode 8.
Yeah.
And I actually think in this most recent episode is the most personality we've seen out of Tech so far.
Well, I think this recent episode in particular gave the whole dynamic of the group a different kind of perspective, because this group has always been a very well-oiled, well-trained unit with a little bit of comedy, but everyone has their roles and everyone doesn't kind of go outside their paradigm of where they exist. But like in this episode, they're bickering and they're kind of like at each other's throats and they're kind of like upset with each other. And you're seeing a different dynamic where part of the group has been kind of disassembled, and that, with Echo gone and with Crosshair gone, the group is now it's dwindling down. And I see how Omega is obviously looking at this as the last piece of family she has, and she's losing pieces of it. So we see that dynamic, and I like seeing them kind of like questioning what's going on. So, and Echo is, Tech is, of course, very like, I process it, I move on, but he's learning that things are changing, which I like, that the dynamics changing. Which, by the way, before we move on off how Echo left, I think it's kind of a cool plot point how we saw the clone rights thing happen. As clones are being phased out of the Empire, they were an important piece of getting the Empire to where it was. And, in the Empire's view, or at least the citizens, this was an integral part of keeping them free and protecting them from the Separatists. So what happens to these clones as they're just discarded? So I thought it was kind of an interesting plot point to see what is the future of these guys.
You know what I found interesting about that was, they were talking about pensions and all this stuff. Well, these clones are, they age double, right? So I don't see what the big deal is about giving them a pension, because they're going to die really quick after they get
which,
it.
By the way, with Rex obviously doesn't. There's a few clones that age out normally.
No, Rex is part of the.
No, I know that, but we see Rex later in like Return of the Jedi, which is still years down the road, 15 years, right?
Well, Return of the Jedi is probably about 23, 24 years from where we are.
So it's like, but he's age appropriate, I think, in that. So I think we're going to have to identify some of these clones are probably not going to age out like the other ones are. Somehow.
Well, Rex is, by the time of the original trilogy, I would say he's genetically somewhere in his 70s.
Yeah.
Whereas he is really only like 30 years old.
Right. That makes sense.
I guess you're right.
So,
but what happens to all the clones? Because like there should be millions of 70-year-old clones walking around.
Yes.
In the time of like A New Hope. But obviously we don't see that.
I think, speculating here a minute, I think it's something we might see in the Bad Batch, and I think it would be amazing. Is there a clone uprising where you've got these clones, some of whom are still wearing the armor, who are just going to say, and as the stormtroopers start to come to prominence, is there going to be some kind of, I don't know, another clone war, where it's stormtroopers versus clones, and there's going to be some kind of, there's going to be a reason you don't see a clone on every corner. I
think it comes down to that, whether it's a conflict or a built-in genetic time bomb that they have. Something's going to end the clones. Hopefully before we're done. I mean, it might not be this season either. It might be a third season of Bad Batch. But I think this show will cover what happens to the clones.
Okay, so if you had stormtroopers facing off against clones, who's going to win that?
Clones.
Right.
Clones. Well, then again,
stormtroopers can't hit the broadside of a barn.
But I mean, if clones are a foot army and you give like, heavy artillery to stormtroopers.
That's true.
But no, as far as battle hard training, and no, it's not a chance.
Well, I think that's something that we're being led to in this show. We're being led to whatever reckoning awaits the clones, because there's a reason we don't see a bunch of clones at the time of the original trilogy. I mean, there's an in-universe reason for it. And I think that's something that's going to be explored, and I think that's this show living up to its maximum potential, like it has a couple of times this season, where it's really giving you those stories that you want to hear about. Like, how did the stormtroopers come about, and why are the clones gone? And that's something the Bad Batch is well positioned to address.
And I mean, we're in the back half of the show now, so it's time to start. And when I saw that it was another filler episode, I was kind of disappointed. I was hoping that the back half of this show was going to be straight narrative and push it. But I'll still take what I get.
I tell you what, though, in watching this show today, I think it's probably one of my favorites of the fillers, because, as you did say, there was some good character stuff in it, and Brian knows this, and Matt, you will discover it. Omega is acting like a teenage girl. Yes. She's like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to go off by myself. And it's these clones who are like just sitting there like, well, and Tech is probably the least equipped to deal with it, because he's almost, like he says, his brain works differently. Like,
he's emotionless.
Yes. And I know this firsthand. Girl, my daughter, she's she's very attached to things. Like, so Omega seeing the Marauder stolen, that impacts her deeply. And for Tech, it's just another piece of equipment that they'll get replaced. And um and she's wondering why he's not upset that Echo's not there. And Tech's just like, hey, Echo's still out there and we can, we'll see him again. I don't know what your problem is, but for someone that age, it impacts her deeply because for her, Echo's not right next to her anymore, and she can't talk to him. And so it's just it was an interesting dynamic.
Speaking of Omega and her terrible accent, no, it's it's something that we brought up last year, or not last year, last time we talked about the show. What's going to happen to Omega? What's her end? Like, where does her character live on in the galaxy? I mean, does this person exist? Boba Fett's sister, is she out there? Or does she go down in flames with the Bad Batch at some point? I mean, like, what happens to Omega?
Well,
become Phasma?
No. Well, here's the thing. I erroneously speculated that she would show up in Book of Boba Fett.
And I think we all hoped that.
That didn't happen. But
she could have been one of the Vespa riders. You never know.
Background. So yeah, I think what they've done here is sort of set up a new Ahsoka mystery. Like, okay, well, back in the day, we were all like, well, what's the deal with Ahsoka? Where's Ahsoka? Does she live? Why is she not in Revenge of the Sith? And nowadays, of course, Ahsoka's getting her own live action show. So I think obviously someday we will find out what happens to Omega, whether it's this season, whether it's next season, whether it's in a different show entirely. We'll get our answer. I don't know what that is. I think it would be very bold for them to have her go out in some kind of blaze of glory with the rest of the team. But I just don't know if they're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder how long they'll keep the series going.
Well, I mean,
I hope for a while because it's been really good.
Well, I think they've got a lot of like Matt says, they have a lot of like this white space to fill.
Yeah.
And I think this series right now, it's our only look into this era. We have Andor for the lead up to the rebellion and A New Hope. We have Mandalorian and those shows that tell us what happens after Return of the Jedi. And Bad Batch is our lone remaining window into the prequel era. And there's still a lot of stuff, of questions and things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, if they want it, the runway's there. I mean, they have a lot of runway to go down. So
yes, they have. I mean, literally, they have almost a couple of decades worth of lead time.
It might be. I know Andor's doing a time jump in how they're going to do season 2, right? They're going to be doing episodes, a couple, like 3 episodes in a time jump. I wouldn't mind if we did a time jump into season 3, however they end season 2, and get us a little further ahead, and just kind of fill it out, so.
Yeah. Because I think season 2 of Bad Batch is pretty much just, I think it's only been a few weeks since they've destroyed Kamino.
Exactly.
So we're not that far along yet, but
it'll be good to get a Omega, a little bit older, grow her up a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of like they did Ahsoka.
Yes,
exactly.
100%.
I don't know if that's what their plan would be, but I'm hoping that they will time jump season 3 a little bit.
Yeah,
just get us out there a little more. Let the Empire be a little more rooted in, and let them be navigating more of a tighter net than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we close it up, does anybody have any notes that they'd like to address? Any things? Brian, I know that you take notes. Me and Matt do not.
I took no notes this time, but
okay,
I do have something that I think you and I may have talked about this briefly one night. But in that, I believe it was the second episode of the season where they're Omega is reaching for some of that treasure from Dooku's palace, and it is just like the scene
Of
where
course.
Indy is reaching for the cup in Last Crusade.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's
I mean,
a good
it's a
note.
straight throwback.
Which you saying that reminded me of something else. We visited Kashyyyk,
Yeah,
which I thought that was a really fun episode.
a lot of
But
Trandoshans on Kashyyyk in
Yeah, that was
this
a good one.
in that episode.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Kenji.
Yeah,
The
Gunji.
spiders grabbing them. That was pretty vicious at the end, by the
Oh,
way.
where the
Yeah.
spider like just pulled that guy up.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
music in the background. Oh,
But
pretty gruesome.
and I don't know, Matt, if you told me this, or maybe I thought it myself and just attributed it to you, because it seems like something you would say, is like, it was good to see a Jedi, but how many Order 66 survivors are we going to keep running into?
Right. Right. That's what I
know?
was saying. That was my first inclination after, and I liked the Wookiee episode a lot. I thought that was actually really one of the best episodes of the season, actually.
Yeah.
But once again, we run into a Jedi, which is fine because we're just a year, maybe at most a year and a half away from Order 66.
Yeah.
Right. Things are still very fresh. And it's okay. I don't mind seeing Jedi running around because they're gonna run into them, but we have to see some attrition here because by the time we get to A New Hope, at least as Yoda feels in the Force, there's none left. Now,
Yeah,
given
pretty much,
at least from what he can gather from the Force at that time.
Sure.
Because I think at that point Ahsoka is already in a different time space, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no,
right?
she's still around.
I think she's
she's not in that.
She came back at the end of Jedi to appear. Remember, she came out of that temporal rift, and she says,
I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if she was gone.
Either way, we're led to believe that there's nothing. The Force isn't telling Yoda anything, so Yoda's not feeling any of the Jedi left. So we have to see some attrition here. So I'm okay seeing Jedi popping in and out, just like we even saw for the Mandalorian 3 season trailer. We see Jedi. I'm assuming that's probably a flashback from Grogu.
Yeah,
from the Jedi Temple. But Jedi have to start disappearing. And I want to see them. I don't want to see them always live and make it. It's okay to see some Jedi, go down. So
yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was the way that Gunji's story was handled. He was on the run. He did not have his lightsaber. He was in hiding,
right?
And he apparently had never been back to Kashyyyk, to his home, because as Jedi they are taken very young, so he had no experience on Kashyyyk. But that was a good episode, and I'm glad we snuck it in there.
Which is the one where they went to the sister's garage in the Coruscant?
Oh, that was one of the pivotal episodes where that's where he took Senator Chuchi.
Right.
That they met up there at the Martez sisters, or as Matt calls her, Patty, because of the cow pie on her head. And I was like, oh man, are we going to get a Martez sisters cameo here? But fortunately that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was part of the kind of the secret network that they had been building up. And so I truly hope that obviously the most recent episode this week was a cliffhanger, so we're going to have to see how they get out of this situation that they're in.
Well, also, I don't think it was just a cliff. Like, I don't think it's just a side quest cliffhanger. I think there's something that's going to be uncovered, obviously, from this. I'm hoping that this turns into be a narrative pusher in some form or another.
Yeah.
And by the way, the thief, the ship, looked a lot like Hondo a little bit, right? It wasn't, but I mean, the same kind of species almost with the helmet on.
I don't know. It could be. I mean, I didn't really get a sense of much of anything, but I got to mention this because I thought about it a couple of times before we sign off. Okay, so when Omega is on Coruscant, she's following Chuchi around.
Right.
And I was thinking last season, this is a person, Omega, who was being hunted by Cad Bane.
Yeah.
And she is walking and talking to Rampart in the Senate and following this senator around while the Bad Batch is off doing their thing. And it's like, holy crap, do you think maybe she should have stayed on the ship or something? I mean, she's running around in Senate hallways, apparently a wanted person who is not unknown to people.
It's true.
But little Omega is just all over the place. So, and
it's
I was
so
like,
overt, it's covert.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. It's like, hey, just put it in their face and be like, oh,
can't be.
The ramp. And interesting that the Kaminoan that they brought in to question,
oh yeah,
they didn't. She didn't seem to recognize Omega. But then again, this Kaminoan was not really part of that.
No, I think she was always stationed on Coruscant, and she wasn't a part of that.
Yeah,
she was a politician. But it's interesting because I'd like to. I mean, we could talk about all this stuff so long. I liked how she was just kind of like, look, my people are gone. Just I'm in a good spot here. Don't rock the boat, kind of thing.
It doesn't have anything to do with
me. Don't drag me. I have a good life. Obviously, my people don't anymore, but I'm okay. So don't rock this boat. And it was interesting how she wasn't like,
who cares about them? Just, it's all about me.
The Kaminoans also now apparently like an endangered species in the galaxy, because they didn't just destroy Tapoka City and the cloning facilities. They apparently went around the entire planet and destroyed every city around the globe. So, yeah, the Kaminoans, another reason maybe you don't see Kaminoans hanging out in the Mos Eisley cantina.
But then again, how weird is that, right? Like nobody knew anything about Kamino. Then all of a sudden you have like politicians appear and they're from Kamino,
and to think, well, they're like, hey, it's a storm, a big storm wiped out the entire planet. And of course in the show they do say that's ridiculous. Right. These cities are made to withstand, these storms, and all of a sudden something happens and it just wipes every city on the planet out, which, I'm glad they addressed, but it does seem like people are being just willfully ignorant.
Yeah.
And being like, oh crap, Kamino got destroyed. I don't know what happened. They had a big wave.
Yeah.
Okay. But of course it was in service to the story because we saw the video recording of what actually happened. And that's
but it's funny about how you're right. Omega is, she's on the wanted list, and nobody cares.
As is the entire Bad Batch. They're still wanted people. Yeah. Because I don't think Rampart's not in the picture right now, but
yeah, but you know who Crossfire is, and I wouldn't be surprised if Crosshair works with Rampart and gets him out or does something, because he's kind of on his own lone wolf mission anyway here.
But he had something of an awakening in his episode when Commander Cody, who of course is a Revenge of the Sith alumni, he goes AWOL. He's like, you know what? Forget this. I'm done. And him and Cody have a talk, and I think Crosshair, I think he's being set up obviously for some sort of redemption.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, he's apparently, I think I saw some cracks start to form in his episode. He was, he's not the true believer, I don't think, that he once was. Not
like the guy that shocked himself to death.
No. And he called himself a true believer.
Yeah.
And Rex is like, what does that mean? So, maybe there are this subset of clones who are like super loyal to Palpatine. And of course, we do have the clones, Rex and so forth, that know what Palpatine's up to. They know he's evil.
Yeah.
That they've found this out for themselves. So, and I think it's very interesting in this show, in those episodes we were talking about, where, people still want the clones around to protect them from the insurgencies that are popping up across the galaxy, which is, of course, setting up the rebellion. Which, after watching Andor, that has a whole new. You think about it in an entirely different way. So I really think it's great, this storytelling that they're doing in this era specifically.
Well, I said it before. Disney animated shows, the animated Star Wars, have really, for the most part, really hit well. And and I just think The Bad Batch is just one of those shows that I look forward to watching. And every Wednesday when it drops, I try and see it right away. It's like it's just it's a good, exciting like time of Star Wars, piece of Star Wars that I want to be in and see more of. So I mean, I like everything they give me, whether it's pushing the narrative forward or it's just filler. It's a great show, and if you're not watching The Bad Batch, I highly recommend jumping on it. You don't even have to watch the Clone Wars; it helps, but you can get right into season 1 of The Bad Batch, catch up quick. And it's a good watch, and it's an exciting show. And it's the white space. If you're a Star Wars fan, it's that white space that you're just dying to see filled. And they do such a good job. So I'm looking forward to the back half of this show. We're going to come back and talk to you at the end of that. We're going to give you our full season recap. Yes. We'll give you our thoughts to see if they're going to give us a season 3, what that season 3 is going to be like. So don't move anywhere, guys. Watch Disney Plus, watch The Bad Batch. Come and join us. Come listen to our show, and we will probably spoil everything under the sun for you. So, but again, Brian, always thank you for joining the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
A true staple of our Star Wars podcasts.
Yeah,
and we will we'll be seeing you soon.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.